audio podcast.
Well, hello. I am not Farzana Baduel. She's at a conference in Sicily. Good work, I guess, if you can find it. But you have found your way into the week Unspun. This is our weekly live look at the world through the eyes of the PR professional from around the world. I'm David Gallagher from London.
I'm Doug Downs, somewhere in Canada's Rocky Mountains.
And we are pleased to have my dear friend, former colleague and president of the PR Council, Kim Sample, joining us as our guest host today. And Kim, I'm going to come back to you in a moment and ask you about your very busy week in Chicago and maybe a little bit about the PR Council for some of our viewers and listeners who don't know about that. But just a quick look at what we got in store for you today. This is our mailroom episode, very popular look at questions and comments from the audience. Our superstar producers, David and Emily, have gone through a selection and pulled out a few short videos for us to take a look at. I think I've seen most of them, but I know we're going to look at what's up with Apple and their support for podcasts. We're going to take a quick look at a backlash from a Halloween campaign by a popular lighting brand. There's a confidence problem that many of us in PR might have about our own personal branding. A look at 1 year into the Trump administration, and then a quick look at the Mandami transition team. So that's what we've got in store. As always, we welcome comments and questions from our audience, so please put them into the chat on any platform, and we will do our best to pull them up on screen. Kim, over to you. I know you were at the Provoke Summit because I saw your post in Chicago. So maybe a few quick highlights from what you took away from that event. I think it's one of the bigger ones in our industry, and then just maybe a word about the PR Council for people who may not be familiar with your work.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Let's start with Provoke. Congrats to Paul and team for another great conference. There was a lot of conversation about this thing you might have heard of called AI, I think it is. And, some interesting takes on it, a little bit of redundancy, but super interesting sessions. One of the sessions that I thought was incredibly interesting was on this consumer obsession with fairness. And I think that's really important for us as communicators to understand that we have to make sure we're being fair. Our company actions are fair. Thought that was super interesting. I learned a new phrase, synthetic FTE. When I first heard it, I kind of winced, but the more I thought about it, I thought, I don't like the word synthetic, but maybe there's something there.
Kim, it was synthetic FTEs. That your audio might have cut out a little bit.
Yeah, synthetic FTEs.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so we're going to have all these new colleagues.
So this is an AI reference.
Wouldn't that be fun?
This is an AI reference, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't mean to cut in because I think you had maybe one other thing you wanted to mention, but I want to come back to the fairness doctrine question too. But sorry, we didn't mean to cut in.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to think what else. Let's go back to the fairness.
So what's that about? I heard a little bit of chatter about kind of rounding up on pennies. Was that what provoked this reaction, or was there a broader theme at play?
Well, I think it's a broader theme, and it's some work that Meslansky and Partners has been doing. They're the firm that specializes in sort of language, which is just so super cool. But they use this example of, pennies are going away in the US. They're too expensive to handle. So McDonald's, some franchisees have moved forward with deciding they're going to eliminate pennies early. And so they round up or they round down. And consumers were outraged, and it created a huge problem for the McDonald's brand because it was perceived to be very unfair. So I think we have to take into account moves like that might seem benign and, oh, you win some, you lose some. People don't want to lose some.
Kim, when I was looking at the agenda, the panel that really caught my eye, and I wish I was there for, was the one on corporate brand. and they were talking about enterprise value increasingly depending on the depth of a brand's communications, how well its purpose shows up beyond ad campaigns. So from your perspective at the summit, did you get a sense that the brands are ready now finally to invest in deeper, more substantive content like podcasts or long form storytelling? Are they finally moving toward owning their channels instead of renting space on social media or billboard or clickable ads?
It's really all over the place, I think. Like, that was a great panel and really terrific to hear what those two companies were doing. I think one thing that's super interesting is all of the interest in GEO has companies understanding that owned is a super important channel. So many people have talked about the corporate blog being new again after they killed it 20 years ago, or not like that long, maybe it was 10, but that's back. That's super important. And I think we're hearing more and more stories about companies that undergo a crisis. Somebody even talked about this at the conference, ELF. I don't know what the crisis was. I meant to look that up, but they had a crisis recently, but nobody talked about it because that brand has been so consistently adhering to its values of inclusivity that it's built this super strong reputation so it can weather that. And we know that is true about brands. I think sometimes the short term gets in the way, though.
Isn't that amazing? There's like a reputation bank, and if you own your channels, you build your bank faster, right? Like your portfolio. Okay, Kim, ready to go to the mailbag here? We got some. Okay, the virtual mail, the synthetic mailbag, if you will. So the first one, I love this point from my pal Greg Wasserman, who lives in Hollywood. It's about Apple's role in the podcast world. I have to set this up a little bit. A few years ago, Apple basically was podcasting. I mean, every iPhone came with the podcast, the little purple podcast app, and that's how most people listen. But lately, Spotify and YouTube have been making big moves into video podcasts, and Apple has been quiet, shall we say. So the question that Greg is asking here is, does Apple even care about podcasts anymore? And if they're not saying much, what does that silence mean from a public relations perspective?
Question. Right now, Spotify's teaming up and looking at how do they take on YouTube. So they've partnered with Netflix for video distribution. This whole time that we've been talking about video in the podcast space, Apple has stayed relatively quiet. A lot of us in the industry are discussing it, but does that mean that others are talking about it? A lot of people are talking about how they need to get their videos on YouTube and Spotify and join these media companies in pursuit of their audiences. Apple has such a massive audience built into podcasting, and they've built HLS, which allows them to have the video capabilities. Why are they staying quiet? And then from a PR standpoint, what does it mean that they are staying quiet and we're allowing others, Apple or YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, and other video platforms to own this conversation?
Okay, so I'll just follow up real quick, then I'll turn it over to the two of you. He's not asking about tech strategy. He's asking about why they're staying quiet and how they manage their reputation and influence in a space that they helped create. My initial take is that this is Apple's MO. They sort of have a mystique about them. They don't follow what Spotify and YouTube are doing. They set the trends and people follow Apple. That's how we behave. The risk is if the silence goes on too long, the narrative hardens into Apple has fallen behind. Over Kim, I'll go first to you as our guest.
I think this is very much Apple. It's such an Apple move, but I agree with you. Like, how long can they wait? I hope they have something brewing that they're going to announce. David, what do you think?
I mostly agree with you. I did ask, this is what I do, Kim. When I don't know about something, I go ask, I dial a friend. And usually Doug asks me about something I don't know, but I did ask someone inside at Apple who asked not to be quoted. But his view was, one, Apple would probably disagree with that characterization, that they've done a lot for podcasting. And in fact, the word pod comes from the iPod pre-streaming. So
not named by them, by someone else, but yeah.
But they introduced the technology that introduced the format. So his view was that they probably would dispute that characterization, that they're not doing enough. He said it might be a reflection of what value they think they can or cannot offer on top of all the content that's there. I know in my own past, when I've worked on, and Kim, we've had clients that had a vast array of products and services. Sometimes you have to select a champion brand, product, or service, and that's where you put your resources in, especially if the budget is more marketing in focus than corporate in focus. And I would suspect that maybe Apple's done the calculation and said, this isn't where our real money is going to come from, or we could add something discernibly different. And that might be hard to hear when you're in the podcasting business, but I suspect that this wasn't just an oversight or a slight. It's just where they think where they can add some value. So that would be
that's amazing. When 1 in 3 Americans has a podcast habit, it's amazing that they would come to a conclusion that audio doesn't fit for them. But you're right. At some point, the silence sends the message itself. The silence is the message.
Back to David's point, like the monetization is at an interesting stage, because those super well-known podcasts, many of them are, asking for subscriptions. They're, they're offering benefits. Like, so there's an issue with how everybody's able to monetize the podcast. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it could be a bigger conversation, Doug, about the switch or the absorption of video into the format in addition to audio, and that's kind of what he was asking about. And even this little show, I think we get as many YouTube views as we do, Spotify or Apple listen. So there is some value, I think, in moving to video. Maybe that's part of the equation as well. But speaking of podcasts, I did catch your show with Farzana this week. Doug, and I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the person you interviewed, but she's a brand.
Joe Jameson on Stories and Strategies. Yeah.
Well, it really struck a chord with me, and I think you might have a clip on it. But for me, the takeaway was that PR people, comms people, as we're so used to building brands and profiles for others, maybe being behind the scenes, we're less comfortable doing that for ourselves in many cases, and that we could probably do a better job of telling our own stories and building our own personal brand. So I don't know if you have a clip or if you want to comment on that, but it just really struck a chord with me.
We do. Let's roll the clip.
I think it's, many people feel it's not the place for sharing that kind of personal story. But I do think there's still a dire need for content with personality, and I think there's a bit of a difference. And to kind of illustrate that point, I'm working on a Sales Navigator project for a client where we're targeting senior marketing professionals in the tech sector. And 95% of what they're writing is, read this white paper that has come from my business, or, look at these insights from my boss in some trade magazine, or come to this webinar. And it's dull, it's horrendously boring. And they're doing it to tick a box for their employer, but it's not telling their network anything about themselves. So, what's their point of view? What do they actually think? What's going to make the people in their network want to work for them? Because it sure as hell isn't that.
Is amazing. Joel was talking about how, we can be afraid as PR pros to put ourselves forward, and opinion is what draws people to you, right? And we're afraid to have an opinion because if I think blue, somebody else says red, and we were all thinking red on the panel that day, obviously with our shirt. But she stepped out of her own comfort zone to do the episode. So just really appreciate that. It's about stepping forward, being bold.
Well, great episode, Kim. Does this come up? So I didn't explain, what the PR Council is, but you represent the biggest, most successful agencies, mostly in the U.S. and you told me also in Canada. Does this come up when you're talking to agency leaders and that's
so funny because I just wrote some different pieces on confidence. What really struck me is I did a focus group with procurement executives at the end of October. And at the end, I said, what is one thing you'd like for me to tell my agency member CEOs? And I thought it was going to be like, show me everything, I asked for. I want to see all your financials.
Lower your rates. Yeah.
And they said they need to be more confident. And I dug in on it a little bit. I don't know what it is, but they never come in with confidence, take the credit they're due. They're sort of hiding behind our executives. They're not telling us about other accomplishments and innovation. And I think this affects everything in the agency business. A big thing on my mind, because we're dedicated to helping agencies be more successful, be more valuable, be more profitable. Confidence in pricing makes me nuts. Like, it goes all the way down to that. Like, we have to be more confident as an industry, and we have to do more thought leadership. We have to be out there talking about our industry. I think that's incredibly important to the reputation of public relations.
I can't add anything to that. Agree 100%. So thanks for weighing in on that. Doug, what's next from the mailbag?
More from my pal Tammy Weinberg up in Edmonton. She's asking, and this sits right at the crossroads of politics and public relations. So yay. She's wondering, as we approach the anniversary of Donald Trump's re-election, whether a leader's rhetoric, especially when it stirs strong emotion, can be managed or reframed through strategic PR, or if it inevitably becomes part of that country's national identity, its brand. In simpler terms, Tammy's asking, can strategic communications overcome a brand that's built on controversy?
Tammy Weinberg, and I'm based in Edmonton, Alberta. We are approaching Trump's anniversary of being re-elected for his second term. That happened last November, and so much has happened since then. There's been shifting alliances to redefining political norms, and the narrative around Trump remains deeply polarizing. From a PR perspective, I'd like to know a couple things. Can reputational damage from a leader's rhetoric be mitigated by strategic PR, or does it become part of the national brand? What lessons can PR pros learn from Trump's approach to media manipulation and agenda setting?
Oh, David,
Doug,
why don't we go first to you just for fun?
I'm dying to get in on this one. And we've talked about this question before, and I probably over answer it sometimes. And I know Tammy didn't mean it exactly this way. So I'll take them in part, because I think there are two questions. One is what's the strategic response to the national brand that's being created? Personally, I think it will take a decade, at least, maybe a generation, to reverse the damage that's being done to the American brand with trade partners, with security partners, with citizens of other countries abroad. I think that it'll take a long time to repair this. I don't know if that's a strategic PR move or a policy move, but I think that the brand is facing significant challenges. And that's just where we stand right now. On her second question, what can we learn tactically? I don't think that's exactly how she phrased it. I flinch when this question comes up, because for me, it's like asking, what can surgeons learn from watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th? I guess they could learn something, but I don't know if that's the lesson we want to repeat. I do think it's worth noting the changes to the assumption we make about the way truth and transparency work, which are two of the cornerstones of communications. And we're seeing how simple power makes really the media environment, the attention economy, something that's really hard to counter, to get a word in edgewise. But to me, I'm going to say this after this week, the bigger question to me is, are we mistaking the media environment for reality? And maybe we're losing sight of the fire because of all of the smoke. And is it actually working? I mean, Trump has lost, the Republicans have lost every election since he's been in power. His approval rating is sinking like a hot turd. So I don't know that it's actually working. And maybe we're assuming that there's something more going on than is actually happening in reality. So sorry, great question from Tammy. That's my attempt to answer a thoughtful question.
Kim?
It's such a hard, I do agree with David. The damage to brand America is going to be very difficult to overcome. That's going to be a very long time. It's so complicated because we need courageous leadership, but you can't be foolish about the implications of being courageous. So it's a very difficult situation. Craig Carroll said something at the Provoke Summit that really stuck with me right at the very end. He's like, what is this with misinformation, disinformation? We need to call it what it is, lies and BS. And I wish we could get to that point. Maybe we are. And I guess the truth is there's a very small population on the right that's very loud. There's a small percentage of the population on the left that's very loud, but most people are in the middle. And I'm hoping the middle gets some courage, calls out the lies and BS, and we can get back on the right track.
I'm kind of with you on that. The only nuance I would add is that the brand for America, to me, is one of division. It's not blaming one or the other. It's that the country is extremely divided. And I think you characterized that well. There's some on the left, some on the right. I hate those terms, but there's a large, hopefully, overlapping Venn diagram that's in the middle. Okay, so I got another one here from my pal Vince Nero. He's talking about the backlash against those. You see those hatch lights? You know, if you have trouble sleeping, you buy one of those hatch lights, and it's got some sound to it, and the lights are kind of soothing. They did some very creative Halloween ads that ran for Hatch, but some didn't like the ads, and now they're boycotting them in response. So here's Vince, and then the commercial itself after Vince, and then I'll show you some of the backlash.
Everyone, my name is Vince Nero. I'm the Director of Content Marketing at BuzzStream, and my topic for conversation is the controversy around the Hatch light. These are white noise machines, alarm clocks. I have 2 of them for my kids, and something came out on TikTok where people wanted to throw them away. They were kind of boycotting them after a couple Halloween-related ads ran, and a couple religious groups kind of butting heads with the ads that ran. So, yeah, I would love people's thoughts around this from a PR perspective and messaging from Hatch.
Okay, I gotta show you the ad
It
here.
all started
Okay,
when we moved into the
here's
new
the ad.
house.
Thanks.
With the stress of the move.
Ava, you already on your phone?
Yeah, Kyle, 1 second. I'm just finishing. I couldn't sleep. When I doom scroll, I guess I look for something to make me feel better.
Today, I'll be making cereal from scratch.
The human body can't survive without sleep.
Hello? Is anyone there? Five, 6, 7. Whoa!
24 hours. Fatigue.
Calm down, go to sleep.
48 hours. Confusion.
Again, Ava?
More than 3 days. Psychosis.
Just need to sleep, Ava!
It won't stop until it gets what it wants. Me? Sleep.
My Hatch machine decided that it had a mind of its own. Many different people have come out saying that they have heard voices in their Hatch sound machines whenever they are trying to go to sleep, or they hear it in their kids' rooms as they're watching on the baby monitor, that they feel like they can hear a conversation happening, but they can't quite understand the words.
About 3.5 years ago, I started to hear things coming out of the sound machine. It didn't matter which sound I was using. Every single sound, I was hearing some kind of murmuring, voices, something, but it felt inherently evil.
Hatch is demonic. If you have a hatch, you need to throw it away right now.
All I can say is I love creative copy, and my only word to Hatch is keep going, keep doing it, break the pattern.
I don't see a crisis in this. I can see where you get nervous. Maybe your social media dashboard starts to light up and you feel like you've got some sort of boycott coming. But I actually think this probably breathed life into a campaign that otherwise was a little bit strange. I mean, for a lighting company, but probably gave it a lot more visibility and eyeballs than it would have gotten otherwise. So with respect to anybody who was either offended or read something into it, I actually think it was probably a second bite at the apple, as I say, and maybe breathe some life into an otherwise okay campaign.
Totally agree.
Well, as we move into our last few minutes, I one last drawing from the mailbag. This was a little bit prompted. This is from my friend Fiona Tulip, who I do think has a name like a Disney princess. She too is a displaced Longhorn, and we were texting about the New York mayor's election, which was the topic of this show a couple of weeks ago, and just thinking about what this means. And I said, these are some great comments. You should put this into the show, because I'd love for other people to have a chance to hear your take, and maybe we can have a quick chat about it. So, Emily, if we could play the video from Fiona, please.
Hi, David. I love your show and the way you unpack what's really going on behind the headlines. So thank you for asking the community to chime in. So my question for you is, and it might be a few mixed in one, but okay, so this week we saw some pretty remarkable stories from women winning major governorships and mayoral races, and then Zoran Mamdani, so excited, naming an all-female transition team in New York. So here's my question. Does this reflect real progress in gender equity, or are we sometimes mistaking visibility for influence? How do we tell when representation actually leads to shared power? And what role does communication play in making that shift real? All right. Floor is yours.
I think as a New Yorker on the show, you've got to go first, Kim, with this.
There was so much packed into that. I mean, it was incredibly exciting what happened. There are a bunch of naysayers for sure, but I think this is what needs to happen to politics. Younger people need to come in with really interesting new ideas. Excited about the female team. Diversity overall is always exciting to see. I think what this is, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're not there yet, but this is definitely progress, and it's exciting to watch.
It was fun to watch, and you can look at it through a gender lens. You can also look at it through a generational lens. I mean, this whole newer age cohort coming in, which a lot of people on all sides of the political spectrum have been saying they want to see younger, newer voices coming into the conversation. Here, the big news was Lena Khan being named to his co-chair of his transition team. And that's probably shocking to a lot of people on Wall Street. If you don't know her, she was in the last administration pretty tough on mergers. So it definitely shows a different way of looking at government power in New York. But thanks, Fiona, for that conversation, and thanks for watching the show. I think we're down, believe it or not, to the last couple of minutes. Kim, thank you so much. I didn't say this. We go way back too. Maybe I should have disclosed that as well. We've known each other since we're like PR children in New York. So it's always good to hear from you. And we all appreciate the work that you do for the PR Council as well. And being willing to step in and guest host a show, on late notice. That was really, really thoughtful and well appreciated by Doug
Kim,
and I.
you were awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm here anytime you've got an absence.
You are welcome back.
Done. Coach.
Done. Kim, hey, I got a photo I want to show you. We talked last week, I think it was, about that dastardly Prince Harry and his wife wearing LA Dodgers caps in Los Angeles. Well, have a look at this photo here. Harry has had a rethink, and now he's donning a new cap. Just the very fact that his dad is like literally our head of state, like dawned on him, right? And now he's cheering for the Toronto Blue Jays after they've lost. So appreciate that. The week Unspun.
Better late than never.
Better late than, right. The cap may be straightened out. His head is on straight now. The Week Unspun is a co-production of Fullgate Advisors, Stories and Strategies podcasts, and Curzon Public Relations. Special thanks to producers David Olajidi and Emily Page. I'm going to leave you with a last thought. This is from Rumi, the 13th century poet. Raise your words, not your voice. It's rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Have a great weekend.